Elowen Brindle woke with her nose buried in royal pillows and one enormous black wolf judging her breakfast prospects. The wolf was sitting beside the bed like a furry executioner with excellent posture. Elowen blinked at him and whispered, "If you are the castle dog, I have questions for your breeder." The wolf's ears twitched. That was the first sign that Elowen had made several mistakes before sunrise. The second sign was the bed itself. It was too large, too soft, and too rich for the little guest room she had been promised. Heavy black curtains draped the posts. Moonlight lay over them in pale strips. The blankets smelled of cedar, winter air, and a sharp, wild scent that made her herbalist instincts sit up before the rest of her did. The third sign opened the chamber door. King Kaelin Varric stood in the doorway with one hand on the latch and the expression of a man who had found a tax collector in his soup. He was tall, dark-haired, and dressed in black linen trousers and an untied nightrobe that did not look restful on him. Nothing about him looked restful. His shoulders were broad enough to block the corridor light. His eyes were amber, cold, and far too awake. Elowen sat up so quickly the blankets swallowed her waist. The wolf rose. Kaelin's gaze moved from Elowen to the wolf, then back to Elowen. Elowen pointed at the animal because her pride had abandoned her. "Your Majesty, your dog is very large." The king's jaw tightened. "He is not a dog." She looked at the wolf again. It was bigger than any hound she had ever seen. Its black fur carried gray streaks like moonlit smoke, and its eyes looked offended by the whole word dog. Elowen nodded with the solemn respect due a royal disaster. "Of course, a royal dog." The wolf made a low sound. Kaelin closed his eyes for one breath. If the floor had opened and dropped Elowen into the kitchens, she would have thanked it. Unfortunately, the floor remained loyal to the king. 3 days earlier, none of this had seemed likely. Elowen Brindle had arrived at Varric Keep in a sleet storm, with 2 trunks, 1 herb chest, and a reputation large enough to make people disappointed when she coughed like everyone else. She was known across the Middle Counties as the woman who could make sleepless merchants sleep, feverish children breathe easier, and gouty barons stop blaming weather for their wine choices. She was not a witch. She said that often. She was a herbalist, which meant she knew what leaves did, what roots should not be boiled, and when a patient's complaint was mostly pride wearing a headache. The invitation from Varric Keep had been polite and strange. Mistress Halda, the royal housekeeper, had written that the castle suffered from winter restlessness. Several nobles could not sleep. Guards dreamed badly. The king himself required mild calming teas and warming sachets for the long moon season. Long moon season was not a medical term. Elowen had underlined it twice before accepting. She had heard old tales about Varric Keep. Everyone had. Travelers said the hills around it belonged to wolves. Shepherds claimed the royal family hunted only under full moons. Drunk men in taverns said the king's ancestors could speak to beasts. Elowen had also heard that swallowing a whole garlic bulb cured jealousy. People said many things when they lacked decent tea. Still, the castle had unnerved her from the first hour. It sat on a black ridge above pine forest and frozen marsh. Its towers rose narrow and high, built for watching moonlit roads. The gates were reinforced with dark iron bands. No bright pale metal glimmered anywhere. Even the candlesticks were brass, bronze, or blackened iron. Elowen noticed because metals mattered to tinctures, and because the absence looked deliberate. Inside, the keep smelled of smoke, beeswax, wet wool, old stone, and too many people trying not to panic. Mistress Halda met her in the entry hall. The housekeeper had frost-white hair, though no pale metal pins held it. Her keys hung from a brass ring at her belt. She looked like a woman who could fold a blanket, a minister, or a minor rebellion with equal skill. Halda clasped Elowen's hands and spoke with brisk relief. "Mistress Brindle, thank heaven, the castle has not slept properly in 6 nights." Elowen removed a wet glove. "Castles rarely sleep, Mistress Halda. This one complains when it does not." That proved true by supper. Doors slammed without wind. Guards snapped at each other over nothing. A young lord in the hall flinched when a platter of roasted onions passed near him. Two ladies nearly wept because the musicians tuned too sharply. One gray-bearded counselor growled at a footman, not spoke harshly. Growled. Elowen looked at Mistress Halda. The housekeeper smiled as if growling counselors were a local custom. Winter nerves. Elowen sniffed the air. Winter nerves smell like damp fur? Halda's smile did not move. The hunting dogs sleep near the West Hall. There were no hunting dogs in the West Hall. There were scratch marks on the stone near the North Passage, though. Elowen said nothing. She had been hired to calm nerves, not insult architecture. She spent the first day making simple things. Lavender and hops for pillows, juniper and pine for warming sachets, chamomile, valerian, oat straw, and a pinch of blackthorn bark for sleep. She added no strong narcotic. Sleep forced too hard often returned as worse waking. The castle watched her work. Servants lingered near the still-room door. Guards passed twice too often. A young page asked whether nettle could cure biting. When Elowen asked what had bitten him, he turned scarlet and fled. By evening, her reputation had made trouble. Lord Meron, the royal physician, came to inspect her supplies. He wore a dark green robe and carried a face arranged around disapproval. His hands were soft. His eyes were clever. His smile had the warmth of a damp cellar. He picked up a bundle of mugwort. Folk remedies. Elowen kept chopping rosemary. Leaves, mostly. The king requires precision. Then he should avoid dying of pride. Pride is difficult to dose. The kitchen maid stared at the table. Lord Meron's nostrils flared. You speak boldly for a village herbalist. Elowen looked at him. I speak accurately for a known one. Mistress Halda coughed into her sleeve. That night, Elowen delivered her first moon calming tea to the royal outer hall. She did not meet the king. A guard took the tray and looked relieved when the cup left her hands. The cup returned empty. The next morning, Mistress Halda told her the king had slept 3 hours. The servants reacted as if Elowen had turned mud into gold. 3 hours was not a triumph in most homes. In Varick Keep, it apparently deserved a chapel bell. Elowen adjusted the formula. She made it warmer and less floral. Whoever needed it had a sharp nervous system and disliked sweet scents. That ruled out half the court and most spoiled poets. On the second night, she delivered the tea herself again. The guard on duty had changed. This one was wide-eyed and pale. From behind the royal door came a crash, then a snarl. Elowen froze. The guard stepped sideways, blocking the door. A chair fell. Did it snarl? Old wood does many things. Elowen looked at the door. The door shuddered once. She handed over the tray. Then give old wood this tea, slowly. The guard accepted it with both hands. That was the first night she heard the wolf. Not fully, not clearly. Just a low, strained sound beneath stone and wood. It crawled along her skin and vanished before reason could name it. She slept badly. On the third day, Mistress Halda moved Elowen to a guest room nearer the still room because the west guest wing had frozen pipes. The housekeeper walked her through the route herself. South stair, left gallery, blue tapestry, third door, Halda instructed. Do not use the north stair after moonrise. Elowen balanced a chest of dried feverfew against her hip. What happens after moonrise? Halda's answer came brisk and flat. People get lost. Elowen balanced the chest higher. That is not a cause, Mistress Halda. The housekeeper opened the guest room door. It is an outcome. Halda showed her the room. It was narrow, warm, and respectable. A little bed, a washstand, a carved chest, a window facing the herb yard. Elowen liked it. Then the storm worsened. The keep groaned under wind. Sleet struck shutters like thrown peas. Servants rushed through corridors with blankets and buckets. Someone shouted about smoke backing down a chimney. Someone else shouted about a lord trapped in the linen cupboard. Elowen carried warming sachets to 3 rooms, corrected a maid's burn poultice, and brewed a stronger batch of moon tea after Mistress Halda appeared with a face that had forgotten rest existed. By the time Elowen returned toward her room, the corridors had shifted in the candlelight. That was what she told herself later. The truth was less flattering. She was exhausted. She carried a lamp in one hand and her herb satchel in the other. The blue tapestry had been taken down because water dripped from the ceiling. A smaller black tapestry hung in its place. Wind blew out 2 wall candles. A side door stood open. She remembered south stair and third door, but forgot that the gallery curved. She entered the north tower without knowing it. The air changed first. It grew colder, cleaner, and threaded with that wild cedar scent she had noticed in the king's empty cup. Elwyn paused. Somewhere below, Mistress Halda shouted for more towels. Elwyn decided that if the castle wanted guests not to wander into forbidden towers, it could label them better. She found a door with a carved wolf on it. That should have warned her. In her defense, nearly everything in Varick Keep had wolves carved on it. Wolf handles, wolf tapestries, wolf chairbacks. Even one butter mold produced tiny wolves at breakfast. The royal family had a theme and no one brave enough to discuss variety. The door was not locked. Inside lay a firelit outer chamber with a long bench beneath the window. Elwyn saw the bench and nearly wept with gratitude. Her plan was simple. Sit for 1 minute, catch her breath, find the real room. She set down her satchel. The chamber smelled like cedar, clean linen, and the bitter edge of sleeplessness. On the table stood the empty cup from her moon tea. Elwyn noticed that she meant to stand. Then thunder rolled over the keep, the fire sighed, and her body made an executive decision without consulting her mind. She fell asleep on the bench. At some point in the night, she woke cold and confused. A low bedchamber door stood ajar. Beyond it, she saw blankets, shadow, and what her sleepy mind decided was her assigned bed. She walked to it with the dignity of a drunk moth. She climbed in. That was how she met the king's wolf at dawn. Now she sat in that bed while King Kaelin Varick looked as if he might declare war on the concept of doors. The huge wolf stood between them. Elwyn gathered the blankets up to her collar. I can explain. The king's stare sharpened. Can you? Not well. The wolf turned its head toward Keelan. Kaelin's mouth tightened. Start anyway. Elwyn explained the storm, the missing tapestry, the open side door, and the bench. She tried to sound composed. That was difficult with royal pillows around her and a wolf the size of a small scandal beside the bed. She ended with the truth. I thought this was my guest room. Kaelin glanced around his vast black curtained chamber. Elwyn followed his gaze. The room contained a carved royal desk, 2 swords mounted high on the wall, a cloak lined with black fur, and enough stern furniture to frighten a bishop. She winced. A very ambitious guest room. Something moved in Kaelin's face. It was not a smile. It might have been the ghost of one, caught and punished. The wolf huffed. Elwyn looked at him. Is he laughing at me? No, Kaelin answered too quickly. The wolf gave a soft huff. Elwyn stared. Kaelin looked betrayed by nature. The situation should have ended there. The king should have summoned Mistress Halda, sent Elwyn away, and locked every north door until summer. He did not. He could not. Because the wolf had not slept in 6 nights. Kaelin had felt him clawing under his skin through every council, every meal, every cold hour before dawn. The heat season had come early and tangled with the long moon. His court kept smiling through headaches, snapped tempers, and sudden shifts they blamed on winter nerves. The beast beside the bed was not Kaelin's shifted body. That would have been easier to explain, though only slightly. It was the moon-bound wolf of the Varick bloodline, an old alpha gift and an old alpha curse. In calm seasons, the wolf lived under Kaelin's skin as instinct, temper, scent, and warning. In long moon heat, it could step out of him in a body of fur, breath, and stubborn judgment. It remained part of him. It also had terrible manners. Then the human herbalist had wandered into the wrong room, wrapped herself in his blankets, and breathed rosemary, chamomile, and warm honey into the air. The wolf had settled. Not softened. Settled. Kaelin had stood in the doorway before dawn, half in dread and half in disbelief, watching his wolf curl on the rug beside the bed like a guard who had found his post. The human woman had slept peacefully. He had not touched her. He had not let anyone enter. He had spent the last hour guarding the door from outside his own chamber while trying to decide whether fate had lost its mind. Now Elwyn Brindle looked at him with rumpled hair, sleepy suspicion, and the sheer nerve to call his wolf a royal dog. Kaelin had faced border rebellions with less difficulty. He drew a careful breath. "You will return to your room." Elwyn nodded. "Gladly." The wolf stepped closer to the bed. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. "Now." The wolf sat. Elwyn glanced between them. "Does he often disagree with royal commands?" "No." The wolf huffed again. Elwyn pressed her lips together. Kaelin pointed at the chamber door. "Mistress Brindle." She slid out of the bed with as much dignity as could be managed while wearing a borrowed night shawl and one stocking. The other stocking had vanished. The wolf's left paw rested on a suspicious lump of fabric. Elwyn looked down. "Is that mine?" The wolf looked away. Kaelin's voice became very low. "Release the stocking." The wolf did not. Elwyn said gently, "Your Majesty, your knot dog has kidnapped my hosiery." The king's expression turned to stone. The wolf's tail moved once. That was the first moment Elwyn realized the animal might be the funniest creature in Varric Keep. It was not the last. Mistress Halda arrived 10 minutes later and found Elwyn standing near the door, Kaelin standing 6 paces away, and the wolf lying on Elwyn's missing stocking as if defending a border. The housekeeper took in the scene. She did not faint. Elwyn respected that deeply. Halda said, with perfect calm, that the storm had confused several guests. Elwyn lifted one brow. "Several? One lord slept in the linen cupboard." The wolf huffed. Elwyn pointed at him. "He knows that is not the same." Kaelin looked at Halda. "Move Mistress Brindle to the south wing. No north stairs, no open side doors, no tapestries removed without signs." Halda bowed. "Of course, sire." The wolf rose. Kaelin stiffened. The wolf walked to Elwyn and dropped her stocking at her feet. Elwyn picked it up slowly. "Thank you." The wolf leaned forward and sniffed her herb satchel. "No," Kaelin ordered. The wolf took the satchel handle in his teeth. Elwyn held on. "Excuse me, that contains valerian, not dinner." The wolf tugged. She tugged back. Halda covered her mouth with one hand. Kaelin looked as if he had entered a private nightmare and found it furnished with comedy. Elwyn won only because the satchel strap broke. The wolf fell backward with the torn strap dangling from his mouth. For one terrible second, silence held. Then the king's wolf, the enormous knot dog of Varric Keep, snorted into his own fur. Elwyn laughed. She tried not to. She truly did. But the sound escaped and bounced off the royal walls. Kaelin stared at her. No one laughed at the Alpha King's wolf. No one except one human herbalist who had slept in the wrong bed and somehow lived. Elwyn covered her mouth. "I apologize." Kaelin's voice was dry as winter bark. "That is doubtful." The wolf gave a smug little snort. Halda turned toward the corridor and made a sound that might have been a cough if coughs had shoulders. By breakfast, half the castle knew something had happened. No one knew exactly what. That made it worse. Servants whispered that the herbalist had cured the king by accident. A guard claimed she had wrestled a beast for her stocking. One scullery boy swore he had seen the king carry a broken satchel strap like a defeated banner. Elwyn sat in the still room grinding fennel seed and wished rumors respected measurements. Mistress Halda set a new satchel strap on the table. Elwyn looked up. "Is the royal dog well?" Halda's face did not change. "The royal animal is not a dog." Elwyn tied the new strap onto her satchel. "Everyone keeps saying that." Halda's fingers paused over the cloth. "Because it is true." Elwyn waited until the housekeeper looked at her. "Then what is he?" Halda folded a cloth. "Old." Elwyn waited. Halda added, "Large. That is not an answer. It is a description." The housekeeper left before Elwyn could sharpen the question. That afternoon, Kaelin summoned her to the small receiving room off the East Hall. It was a cold chamber with narrow windows and carved chairs. No wolf was present. No enormous animal lurked behind the curtains. Elwyn checked, twice. The king stood beside the hearth in a black coat fastened with dark iron clasps. His hair was tied at his neck. He looked less like a man who had slept and more like a man who had briefly negotiated with rest. Elowen curtsied because she remembered etiquette when not trapped in his blankets. Kaelin gestured to the chair opposite him. Sit. She sat. He remained standing. Elowen folded her hands. Am I being dismissed? No. Executed? His brows drew together. No. Charged for the betting? The king looked at the ceiling. Elowen decided that meant no. Kaelin spoke after a pause. Your calming blend works. I am pleased. Too well. That was interesting. Elowen leaned forward. Too well is usually not a medical complaint. It is when the patient refuses all other regulation. The patient being you? His face closed. The royal household. Elowen hummed. The royal household has paws? Kaelin's gaze sharpened. She smiled politely. I ask because one member attempted to eat my satchel. The king's mouth betrayed him again. Almost a smile. Then duty crushed it. He said the animal had been unsettled by the storm. Elowen thought of the wolf's intelligent eyes, the way Kaelin had ordered it like a soldier, the way it had disobeyed like family. She chose not to push yet. Then I can make a separate calming sachet for him, Elowen offered. If he is not a dog, I will call it a large animal blend. Kaelin said, he does not require one. That night, the wolf stole the first sachet. Elowen learned this because she woke to scratching at her new south wing door. The room was small, cozy, and correctly labeled. Halda had personally inspected it. A brass latch secured the door. A wool rug lay near the hearth. Elowen had gone to bed pleased with the absence of royal furniture. Then something scratched again. She lit a candle and opened the door 2 inches. Amber eyes looked back. The enormous wolf sat in the corridor with one of her calming sachets hanging from his mouth. Behind him, 2 guards stood pressed against the wall like men considering religious lives. Elowen stared at the wolf. The wolf stared back. The sachet smelled of chamomile, pine, and honeyed oat straw. Elowen whispered, You are not supposed to have that. The wolf pushed his nose through the gap. No. He pushed harder. I am a respected herbalist, Elowen told him. I do not negotiate with burglars. The wolf's tail thumped once against the corridor floor. One guard made a strangled sound. Elowen opened the door wider because her common sense had been worn down by sleep and curiosity. The wolf trotted in, circled her hearthrug 3 times, and lay down with the sachet between his paws. She pointed toward the hall. Out. The wolf closed his eyes. Elowen looked at the guards. The older guard whispered, We can fetch the king. The wolf opened one eye. Both guards became very still. Elowen sighed. Fetch Mistress Halda first. The king looks like he needs sleep more than anyone. The wolf gave a pleased huff. That pleased huff told her more than anyone intended. 20 minutes later, Kaelin appeared in the doorway wearing boots, a coat thrown over his shirt, and an expression carved from midnight. The wolf was asleep on Elowen's rug. Elowen sat at the small table, writing notes by candlelight. Kaelin looked at the wolf. He disturbed you. He burgled me. The king's eyes shifted to the sachet. That is regrettable. He also tracked mud on the rug. Kaelin's gaze dipped. The wolf had indeed left prints. Large prints. Too large for any dog. Too neat for any normal beast. The claws were heavier, the pad shape different. Elowen saw Kaelin see her seeing that. The room grew quieter. She tapped her quill against the paper. Your Majesty, what kind of animal is he? Kaelin did not answer at once. The wolf opened both eyes. Elowen felt the same strange pressure she had felt behind the royal door. Not danger, attention. Kaelin said, A rare northern wolf. The wolf huffed. Elowen looked at the animal. The animal looked smug. He disagrees, she said. He has no medical training. Neither do most nobles, but they keep opinions. Kaelin rubbed one hand over his face. Elowen softened her voice. I cannot treat what you refuse to name. The king's hand lowered. For a moment, she saw exhaustion under the crown. It lived in the tight line near his mouth and the shadows beneath his eyes. This was not merely a king hiding a pet. This was a man trapped between secrecy and need. Then he rebuilt the wall. "You are here to provide common calming blends," Kaelin said. "Nothing more," Elowen's pride pricked. "Then I suggest you keep your uncommon wolf out of my room." The wolf thumped his tail once. Kaelin closed his eyes. Elowen wrote one line in her notes. "Subject displays strong opinions and poor respect for doors." By morning, the castle had a new roomer. The royal animal preferred Mistress Brindle's room. Elowen found this out when the kitchen gave her 2 extra honey cakes and asked whether the large northern wolf liked raisins. She said raisins could upset some animals. The kitchen maids nodded as if this were state policy. Her work became busier. The moon season deepened. So did the castle's restlessness. People snapped at laughter, then apologized with strange shame. Guards grew pale under moonrise. Noble ladies wore too much perfume to cover a scent Elowen could not name. Several men avoided open windows after sunset. Elowen treated the symptoms she could see. She brewed cooling teas for flushed faces. She made pine and mint steam for tight chests. She stitched small pouches of oat straw, lemon balm, and dried apple peel for people who clutched at calm like a rope. The remedies helped. That made Lord Meron angrier. He cornered her in the still room on the 4th morning while she was grinding willow bark. "You overstep," he told her. Elowen did not stop grinding, usually only when someone leaves a bucket in the dark. "These are royal patients. Then they should be grateful someone is treating them like patients." Meron's thin mouth tightened. "You know nothing of the conditions in this house." She finally looked up. "Because no one will tell me anything. That is by design. Then do not complain when I design around it." The mortar made a satisfying scrape. Meron leaned closer. "You are human." The word landed oddly. Not country-born, not common, not woman, human. Elowen kept her face still. "Most days. Do not mistake a few quiet nights for trust." He left before she could answer. Elowen stared after him. The old tavern stories returned. Wolves under skin. Kings with moon blood. Men who vanished into forests and came back with animal eyes. She told herself to be sensible. Then she found black fur on the still room floor. The fur was not from any dog she knew. She wrapped it in cloth and placed it in her chest. That evening, Kaelin came to the still room. He did not arrive like a king. Kings announced themselves. They brought guards, noise, and the cold draft of authority. Kaelin appeared in the doorway without ceremony, one shoulder against the frame, looking too tired to frighten anyone properly. Elowen was tying sachets. The room smelled of lavender, smoke, dried orange peel, and the bitter root she used for fever. She looked up. "Is your uncommon wolf in trouble?" "He is missing." Elowen paused. From under her work table came a soft snore. Kaelin followed her gaze. The wolf lay beneath the table with 3 sachets under his chin. He had somehow squeezed his enormous body into a space intended for baskets. One paw stuck out. His nose rested on Elowen's hem. Kaelin said nothing. Elowen said nothing. The wolf opened one eye and closed it again. Elowen whispered, "I deny involvement." Kaelin's expression did not change. "He is touching your dress." Elowen looked down at the huge head resting near her hem. "He is touching my inventory." Kaelin's voice lowered. "He should not be here." She lifted one shoulder. "I told him that." The king waited for the useful part. Elowen gave it to him with a sigh. He displayed royal listening. The corner of Kaelin's mouth moved. Elowen saw it this time. It changed his face so quickly that she almost forgot he was impossible. The cold king was still there, but beneath him was a man with a laugh chained somewhere too deep. She wanted to pick the lock. That was inconvenient. Kaelin stepped into the room. The wolf's ears twitched, but he did not move. "Out," Kaelin ordered. The wolf sighed. "Now." The wolf rolled onto his side. Elowen pressed a hand to her mouth. Kaelin looked at her. "Do not encourage him." "I would never." The wolf made an offended sound. Elowen coughed. Kaelin looked betrayed again. It was becoming his most human expression. Eventually, the wolf rose, shook himself, scattered 3 dried rose hips across the floor, and walked to Kaelin's side. He stopped beside the king, then turned and pushed his head under Elowin's hand. She froze. His fur was thick, warm, and unexpectedly soft. Beneath it, power moved like a storm held in muscle. Elowin felt him breathe. Kaelin went very still. She should have pulled back. Instead, she scratched behind the wolf's ear. The wolf's eyes closed in bliss. Kaelin made a strangled sound. Elowin looked up. "Is this forbidden?" Kaelin's reply came too quickly. "It is inappropriate." Elowin kept scratching behind the wolf's ear. "For wolves?" "For him," Kaelin said, and the stiffness in his voice made the answer stranger. She looked down at the blissful animal. "He seems enthusiastic." The king's gaze stayed on her hand. "That is part of the problem." The wolf leaned harder into her hand. Elowin smiled despite herself. "Your rare northern wolf is shameless." Kaelin watched her fingers move through dark fur. Yes. That yes had weight. It was not only about the animal. The warmth in the room changed. Elowin removed her hand carefully. The wolf opened his eyes and looked disappointed enough to shame a bishop. She pointed toward the door. "Go with your king." The wolf glanced at Kaelin, then back at her. Kaelin's voice lowered. "You heard her." This time the wolf obeyed. Elowin noticed that too. The days after that developed a pattern that no sensible household would allow. Elowin worked. The wolf interfered. Kaelin denied responsibility. The castle pretended this was normal. On Monday, the wolf stole a basket of warming sachets and carried them to the royal council chamber. Kaelin conducted an entire grain hearing, while the basket sat beside his throne like a fragrant hostage. When Elowin arrived to retrieve it, Lord Meron glared. Kaelin looked straight ahead. The animal found them. Elowin lifted the basket. The animal untied 3 knots. The wolf, hidden behind the throne, scratched one paw across the floor. On Tuesday, the wolf followed Elowin to the herb yard and lay across the gate so she could not leave until she put on her cloak. She called him a tyrant. He wagged his tail once. On Wednesday, Kaelin found Elowin in the library alcove reading a bestiary. The book was open to a page about wolves of unnatural intelligence. He took one look at the illustration and said the artist had poor anatomy. Elowin did not look up. "You know many wolves with better anatomy?" Kaelin leaned closer to the page. "I know enough to object to slander." Elowin kept her face solemn. "Against wolves?" He did not blink. "Against drawing." The wolf, lying under the window bench, thumped his tail. On Thursday, Elowin discovered that the wolf disliked Lord Meron. This was useful because Elowin also disliked Lord Meron. The physician entered the still room while she was measuring moon tea. The wolf, who had been lying like a rug near the hearth, rose without sound. His fur lifted along his spine. Meron stopped at the threshold. "That creature should be restrained," he snapped. Elowin stirred the tea. "He understands rude tones. He is dangerous." The wolf showed one tooth. "He also understands accurate ones," Elowin added, though her pulse kicked. Kaelin arrived before Meron could answer. His presence filled the doorway behind the physician. "Is there a problem?" the king asked. Meron bowed too quickly. "I came to review the herbalist's formula." The wolf snorted. Elowin looked into her cup. Kaelin's gaze fixed on Meron. "Did you?" "For safety, sire." The wolf's ears flattened. Meron's face tightened. Elowin filed that away. Kaelin dismissed him with a quiet word. The physician left stiffly, taking his cold cellar smile with him. When the door closed, Elowin asked whether the wolf reacted that strongly to everyone Kaelin disliked. Kaelin stared at her. The wolf sat. Elowin crossed her arms. That was a yes-shaped silence. "He reacts to many things," Kaelin said. Elowin began counting on her fingers. "Dust?" Kaelin answered like a man stepping around traps. "Sometimes." She raised a second finger. "Perfume?" "Often." Her third finger rose with deliberate sweetness. "Royal physicians who touch my formulas?" Kaelin's eyes darkened. "Mistress Brindle." "Your Majesty." The wolf gave a low, satisfied rumble. Elowin pointed at him. See? Kalen looked at the ceiling, as if asking old gods why they had sent him a woman with questions. That night, the heat season sharpened. Eowyn did not know the name for it yet. She knew only that the castle changed after sunset. The air grew tight. Candles guttered blue at the core. People moved carefully, as if every sound had teeth. She smelled it in the halls. Not rot, not sickness. A hot, restless scent beneath wool and smoke. She was in the still room preparing fresh tea when a crash came from the east passage. Then a shout, then a snarl too large for any throat she wanted to imagine. Eowyn grabbed her satchel and ran. She found a young nobleman crouched near the wall, shaking. His eyes were gold. Not brown, not hazel. Gold. His teeth looked too sharp. Two guards stood nearby, hands raised, not drawing weapons. Kalen stood between the nobleman and a terrified maid. "Leave," he ordered the maid. The maid fled. Eowyn stopped at the edge of the scene. The young nobleman's breath came fast. His hands dug into the stone floor. His nails were no longer quite nails. Eowyn felt the world tilt. Kalen did not look at her. "Go back. He needs help. Go back, Mistress Brindle." The command struck harder than fear. Eowyn was used to men being wrong with confidence. She was not used to caring whether this one was. She took one step forward. His pupils are blown wide. He is overheating. That steam draught from the kitchen is making it worse. Kalen's head snapped toward her. The young nobleman snarled. The air shifted. In the next second, the black wolf appeared from the side passage and slammed his shoulder against the nobleman, not biting, just pinning him with impossible force. Eowyn's breath vanished. The animal had not moved like a dog. It had moved like a person making a choice. Kalen's eyes glowed the same amber as the wolf's. "Eowyn," he said, and it was the first time he had used her name. "Leave." She heard the danger. She also heard the pain under it. Eowyn opened her satchel with shaking hands. "No." Kalen's expression became terrible. She ignored it because fear could wait behind work. She crushed dried mint, lemon balm, and frost leaf into a cloth. Then she soaked it with cool water from the wall basin and tossed it to one guard. "Hold it near his nose," she ordered. The guard looked at Kalen. Eowyn snapped. "If you ask permission while he is overheating, I will put you in the basin." The guard obeyed. Kalen looked at her as if she had just threatened a soldier with plumbing in front of the crown. The young nobleman's breathing slowed after 3 minutes. Not cured, never that quickly, but steadier. The wolf eased pressure from his shoulder. The nobleman sagged against the wall and began to weep. Eowyn's hands shook only after the crisis passed. Kalen saw. He stepped toward her, then stopped himself. That restraint mattered. She did not know why. It did. She looked at the wolf, then at the nobleman's eyes, then at Kalen. "Winter nerves?" she said. No one answered. The wolf lowered his head. Eowyn laughed once. It was not a happy laugh. "You people are terrible at lying." Kalen's voice was rough. "Come with me." He led her to the moon gallery, a long hall of narrow windows and brass candlestands. Moonlight lay across the floor in pale bars. Outside, the forest moved under wind. Eowyn kept her satchel clutched to her chest. Kalen stood several paces away. He looked more tired than ever. "What are you?" she asked. The question left no room for royal weather. Kalen looked through the window at the moon. Then he told her, not all of it at first, enough to break the secrecy cleanly. Werewolves were real. Varric Keep was a hidden wolf court. The nobles she treated were not ill in the human way. Heat season and long moon had overlapped, worsening instincts, temper, and sleep. Then Kalen explained the impossible part she most needed named. The black wolf was not a castle pet. It was not an ordinary wolf either, and it was not Kalen's body after shifting. It was his moon-bound wolf, a rare Alpha King manifestation that could step outside him during long moon heat. It shared his senses, instincts, and emotional pressure. It could move through the keep, obey or disobey him, and make him regret every foolish sentence in public. It could not live apart from him. It could not choose a mate for him. It could, unfortunately, steal stockings. Elowen's mouth went dry. She looked down the corridor. The wolf sat there, watching them. His ears were slightly back, as if he knew he had been part of poor etiquette. Elowen pointed at him. "That is a werewolf?" Kalen's face tightened. "Yes." "Whose?" Silence. The wolf looked at Kalen. Elowen looked at Kalen. Several thoughts arrived together, collided, and fell down. Elowen pressed one hand to her forehead. "Yours." Kalen did not deny it. Elowen sat down on the nearest stone bench. That was wise, because her knees had become decorative. She breathed in slowly. Rosemary from her satchel, smoke from the candles, wild cedar from Kalen, wolf from the corridor. Then she said the only thing her mind could manage. "I fed the Alpha King's wolf honey cakes." Kalen's eyes flickered. The wolf's tail thumped once. Elowen pointed at him again. "He knew. He knows many things. He let me call him a royal dog." Kalen's mouth moved. He enjoyed it. The laugh burst out of her before shock could stop it. Then the laugh shook and nearly became tears. Kalen took one step, stopped, and kept his hands at his sides. "I should have told you sooner," he said. "Yes." No softness there. She needed him to hear it. His jaw tightened. "I feared putting you at risk." "You put me at risk by letting me treat what you would not name." The wolf lowered his head to his paws. Kalen accepted the blow without defense. Yes, that helped more than an excuse would have. Elowen rubbed her forehead. "Are you dangerous to me?" He answered carefully. "I can be dangerous. I will not harm you by choice." That is not the same answer. No. Truth. Hard, plain, frightening. Elowen respected it despite herself. Kalen continued. He explained the rules. No pale, dangerous metal in the keep. No human guests near the North Tower after moonrise. No untrained person near shifting wolves. No forced change, ever. Turning a human required choice, knowledge, and ritual. It carried pain, risk, and no promise of happiness. Elowen listened without blinking. Then she asked if he had considered mentioning any of this before she woke beside a wolf. The wolf gave a small, guilty whine. Kalen looked at him. "Not now." Elowen stared at both of them. "Did he complain because you were about to say something foolish?" Kalen's silence answered that well enough. She stood. "I need time." "You may leave the keep," he said at once. That surprised her. He looked at her directly. "If you wish to go, I will have a carriage prepared by morning. You will be escorted safely. No one will stop you. No oath will be demanded." Elowen studied him. This was the Alpha King, everyone whispered. A ruler who could quiet a hall by entering it. Yet he stood before her looking like every word scraped something raw. "And if I stay?" she asked. Kalen's voice lowered. "Then you stay as a guest and healer by your own choice, not as prisoner, not as secret keeper by force." The wolf gave a soft sound. Elowen looked at him. "And him?" "He will stop entering your room." The wolf snorted so hard that one candle guttered. Elowen should not have laughed. She did. Kalen closed his eyes. Her laughter steadied into breath. "I will decide in the morning." Kalen bowed his head. "Of course." The wolf walked toward her, slow and cautious. Elowen lifted a hand. "No, I am angry with you too." The wolf stopped. Then he backed up and sat beside Kalen, looking miserable and noble in equal parts. That nearly broke her resolve. She left before it could. Elowen did not sleep. Her south wing room felt smaller than before. Every harmless sound had grown teeth. Wind at the shutters, ash settling in the hearth, boots in the corridor. Somewhere far away, a howl rose and faded. She sat at the table with every candle lit and made lists, known facts. Werewolves existed. The king was one. The enormous wolf had stolen her stocking. That fact did not belong on the same page as the others, but there it was. She wrote symptoms next: heat, insomnia, aggression, scent sensitivity, moon-triggered stress, overuse of sedating blends, poor disclosure habits among royal households. Then she wrote choices: leave, stay, demand full information, refuse all secret treatment. Do not marry the wolf. She stared at the last line. Why had she written that? She scratched it out so hard the quill tore paper. Near dawn, she opened the door. A covered tray waited outside. Porridge, apple slices, honey, and a small folded note. The note was from Kaylin. It read, "No guard will question your decision. If you leave, Halda will pay your full fee and escort you home. If you stay, I will answer every question that does not endanger another person's private dignity." Below that, in a different hand, Halda had added, "Eat first. Moral decisions sit poorly on an empty stomach." Elowen smiled despite the night. No wolf waited in the corridor. That disappointed her. She resented that too. By mid-morning, she found Kalen in the herb yard. He stood near the frost-crusted rosemary bed, speaking with Valen, his captain and closest advisor. Valen was broad, dark-skinned, and amber-eyed, with the calm of a man who had seen every royal disaster and labeled most of them avoidable. The wolf was nowhere visible. Elowen stopped at the gate. Kalen turned immediately. Of course he heard her. Werewolf, she was going to need a separate list for that. Valen bowed. "Mistress Brindle." Elowen looked at him. "Are you also a wolf?" Valen's brows rose. Kalen inhaled slowly. Valen answered, "Yes." "Thank you," Elowen said. "See, that was simple." Valen looked at Kalen. "I like her." Kalen's expression suggested this was inconvenient. Elowen stepped into the yard. The morning smelled of frost, rosemary, damp soil, and the faint animal warmth she now understood. The knowledge should have made everything stranger. Instead, it made the puzzle pieces click with terrible satisfaction. "I will stay for 1 week," she told Kalen. "During that week, I will treat only with full information. No false names for symptoms. No pretending your wolf is a decorative hound. No Lord Maron touching my formulas without my consent." Valen murmured, "Wise." Kalen nodded. "Agreed. And no entering my room." The black wolf appeared from behind the rosemary hedge. Elowen stared. Kalen looked tired. He heard. The wolf sat deliberately outside the gate. Elowen pointed at him. "That includes you." The wolf lowered his head onto his paws. Valen looked away, shoulders shaking once. Kalen's voice went flat. "Captain," Valen recovered. "I am overcome by respect for boundaries." The wolf thumped his tail. Elowen laughed, and that was how she stayed. Her first official day after learning the truth began with paperwork. Elowen had expected blood oaths, moon rituals, or at least a dramatic warning beneath a tower window. Instead, Mistress Halda brought 3 contracts, 2 ink pots, and a plate of spiced buns. The housekeeper placed all of it on the stillroom table with the dignity of a woman who believed bureaucracy could save lives if folded properly. The first contract named Elowen a temporary royal healer. The second listed the boundaries of her work. The third stated that she could leave Varick Keep at any time unless she was actively holding a boiling kettle. Elowen read that line twice. Halda explained that the kettle clause was new. Apparently, one of the previous healers had made a dramatic exit while carrying soup. The story ended with 3 burned guards, 1 insulted carpet, and a policy amendment. Elowen signed after adding a note that no person, wolf, king, captain, physician, noble, housekeeper, kitchen runner, or unusually clever animal could enter her room without permission. Halda read the addition. Then she asked if Elowen wanted the wolf named specifically. Elowen looked toward the door. A black nose was visible at the threshold, exactly outside the line. She added the wolf by title. The nose withdrew. That morning taught Elowen the first rule of living among werewolves. They respected written law more than humans did, but they treated loopholes as a competitive sport. By noon, the wolf had discovered that the contract said room, not still room. He appeared beneath her workbench with the air of a scholar presenting a legal argument. Elowen did not scream, because a professional woman did not scream at patients. She did, however, drop 3 dried figs into a mortar. The wolf ate one. That was not medicine. It was theft with excellent timing. Elowen called for Halda. Kalen arrived instead, which said troubling things about castle communication and wolf guilt. He found Elowen standing on one side of the table, the wolf on the other, and a half-crushed fig between them like disputed territory. The king looked at the wolf. The wolf looked at the fig. Elwyn announced that she had found the first loophole. Kalen read the contract, then pinched the bridge of his nose. The wolf's tail moved once. It had the smug rhythm of a lawyer collecting payment. Before sunset, Valen drafted an amendment covering still rooms, herb yards, kitchens, guest corridors, washrooms, storage rooms, and any space containing Elowyn's belongings, work, person, scent, shadow, or shoes. Elowyn considered that thorough. The wolf considered it tyranny. He expressed this by lying flat in the middle of the hall and refusing to move until Tavi stepped over him with a basket of rolls. Tavi whispered that rebellion should not block dinner traffic. The wolf accepted this argument and shifted 6 inches. Elowyn began keeping a new notebook. She titled it Observations on Varick Heat Season and Related Nonsense. The first section was serious. She listed symptoms by rank, age, diet, moon exposure, and prior treatment. Young wolves suffered sharp spikes of restless energy. Older wolves grew rigid, then exhausted. Some had headaches after Meron's old draughts. Some flinched at violet perfume. Nearly all showed relief around cedar, rosemary, oat straw, and controlled warmth. The second section was less serious, though still medically relevant. Wolf court behavior under strain included pacing, chair scratching, unnecessary staring, possessive rearrangement of blankets, door sniffing, denial, and stealing soft objects from trusted persons. Elowyn underlined trusted persons. Then she stared at the word until it became inconvenient. She tried changing it to nearby persons. The ink looked cowardly. She crossed it out and wrote trusted again. That evening, Keelan asked to read her notes. He stood in the still room doorway and knocked once on the frame. The wolf sat behind him, trying to look uninvolved while a dried apple peel stuck to his muzzle. Elowyn gave Kaelin the serious pages. She kept the nonsense section under her elbow. The king noticed. Of course he noticed. Werewolves had many unfair gifts: hearing, scent, speed, moonlit eyes, and the ability to detect when a woman hid embarrassing research under her arm. Kaelin did not demand it. That was worse. He only asked whether the hidden pages concerned his court. Elowyn said they concerned clinical texture. The wolf gave a soft huff. Kaelin looked down at him. Elowyn slid the notebook behind a jar of mint. The reaction proved another problem. The wolf's moods were not constant. He huffed at bitter herbs, flattened his ears at sharp voices, rumbled at people Kaelin distrusted, and once shoved Tavi gently toward the cooling rack after the boy stole honey crusts. This made him useful and useless in equal measure. Elowyn could not build medicine on wolf dramatics. She could build questions from them. That became her method. If the wolf reacted, she checked the surroundings. A bitter scent in a cup, a forced smile, a warmed seal, a servant's sleeve stained with a herb that should not have been in that room. Each reaction pointed only to discomfort or suspicion. The proof had to stand on its own feet. Kaelin accepted this with quiet respect. Some nobles did not. Lord Barrent, who had the shape of a wardrobe and the temper of wet wool, complained that a human woman was turning the ancient court into a kitchen garden. He said this during supper while wearing a sasha Elowyn had made. The wolf thumped his tail under the high table. Barrent pretended not to hear. The young wolves did hear. They laughed into their cups until Valen told them to respect their elders. Valen wore Elowyn's calming sachet too. He had tied it under his collar with no shame at all. Elowyn learned another rule then. A powerful court could resist reform in public while using it in private. The same lord who mocked her blends sent a servant for extra sleep tea before midnight. The lady who called her remedies charming village tricks requested 3 more sachets for her sons. Even Lady Vesha, who never admitted defeat if it could be disguised as refinement, asked whether lemon balm came in a less rustic pouch. Elowyn made one with green thread. Vesha wore it the next day and claimed the color had matched her sleeves by accident. The wolf gave a theatrical huff when she passed. Vesha told him dignity did not suit him. He wagged. Comedy kept the castle from choking on its own fear. That surprised Elowyn most. The keep had hidden itself for generations. Hidden identities, hidden instincts, hidden pain behind words like discipline and tradition. Once the first secrets cracked, everyone expected disaster. Instead, small, ridiculous moments slipped through the cracks and gave people room to breathe. A guard admitted that he shifted badly after eating pickled onions. The kitchen banned pickled onions on moon nights after brief protest from 3 men and 1 elderly aunt. A young she-wolf confessed that she clawed chair legs because sitting still during long council made her skin itch. Elowen suggested smooth worry stones, leather hand grips, and shorter hearings. Valen added shorter hearings to the reform list so quickly that Elowen suspected he had prayed for this opening. One boy in training burst into tears because he thought his wolf hated him. Kaelin sat with him in the courtyard after dusk, speaking too low for Elowen to hear. She saw the boy nod. She saw Kaelin place a careful hand on his shoulder. She saw the black wolf lie nearby with his head on his paws, calm as a hearthrug. That image stayed with her. Kaelin was not gentle by instinct. He was choosing it, again and again, like learning a difficult remedy by exact measure. Elowen respected exact measures. Her own fear did not vanish. Sometimes she woke before dawn and remembered teeth in the East Passage. Sometimes a sudden snarl made her pulse slam against her ribs. Sometimes she looked at Kaelin's hands and thought of claws hidden beneath skin. She wrote those facts too. Fear, when named, became less likely to drive the cart. Kaelin found the page by accident when a gust blew her notes across the herb yard. He caught 3 pages before they fell into a puddle. One of them was the fear list. Elowen expected apology or embarrassment. He gave her the page back without reading past the title. That mattered more than a speech. Later, he asked whether there were ways to make the keep feel safer for her. She gave him a practical list, because romance was useless if it could not survive logistics. Better signs in guest corridors, clear bells for shift emergencies, no locked healing rooms from the outside, a rule that no wolf, however royal, could block an exit. Kaelin accepted each point. The wolf disliked the exit rule. He demonstrated this by sitting near the herb yard gate, leaving exactly enough space for Elowen to pass if she turned sideways. Elowen did not turn sideways. She waited. The wolf waited. 2 gardeners watched from behind a hedge with the solemn attention of men witnessing law develop. After 5 minutes, Kaelin appeared. He did not command the wolf. He folded his arms and waited too. The wolf looked from one to the other, sighed as if wronged by civilization, and moved. Elowen walked through the gate. The gardeners quietly applauded. The wolf snorted at them. Trust grew in such undignified steps. It grew when Kaelin told her which stairways became unsafe under full moon, and why. It grew when Elowen admitted that his wolf's pacing frightened her less when she could hear him coming. It grew when he let her see the old north sleeping chamber, where scratch marks scarred the inside of the door. Kaelin had made those marks years earlier, during his first season as king, when Maron's draughts left him trapped in his own skin. Elowen stood in that room for a long time. The air smelled scrubbed clean, but old fear still lived in stone. No amount of soap could remove history. She touched one gouge in the door and felt anger rise hot behind her ribs. Not at the wolf. At the men who had called suffering obedience. Kaelin watched from the threshold. He did not enter until she turned and nodded. Even then, he stayed near the open door. She wanted to say something clever. Nothing clever came. So she told him the room needed sunlight, fresh boards, and no locks that closed from the outside. The next morning, carpenters arrived. By afternoon, Tavi had renamed the chamber the Not Horrible Room. Hulda corrected him to the North Recovery Room. The servants kept Tavi's version. Kaelin pretended not to know. The wolf groaned every time someone used the official name. By then, Elowen understood that the animal was not merely comic relief. He was Kaelin without court armor. His impulses were inconvenient, but they were not random. He went to Elowen because her scent calmed him, yes, but also because she named pain without shame. He stole soft things because his world had lacked softness. He blocked doors because protection and control had grown tangled in him. That did not make the behavior acceptable. It made it treatable. Elowen began training both wolf and king. She never called it that. Kaelin would have objected. The wolf would have enjoyed it. She taught the wolf to sit outside a doorway and wait for invitation. She rewarded him with apple peel, which she insisted was not bribery but structured cooperation. She taught Kalen to phrase concern as a question before it became an order. She rewarded him with smiles, which she also insisted were not bribery. Valen observed one lesson from the corridor. He later told Halda that the Alpha King had been housebroken emotionally. Halda wrote that phrase nowhere, proving her loyalty. Tavi heard it anyway, proving castle walls had ears, and most of them worked in kitchens. The phrase spread for half a day before Kalen discovered it. He entered the still room wearing the expression of a man about to outlaw humor. Elowyn was drying mint. The wolf was sitting beside her, completely innocent except for the green leaves on his nose. Kalen asked whether she had heard the rumor. Elowyn said there were many. He clarified that one involved housebreaking. The wolf huffed. Elowyn arranged the mint with careful hands. She said training was a medical term in some contexts. Kalen looked at her. She looked back. The wolf pawed at the floor. Kalen left before laughter defeated him in public. Elowyn counted that as another sign of recovery. The next week changed the castle. Not quickly. Castles disliked change. So did kings, physicians, and wolves who had recently been denied room privileges. Elowyn began with information. Real information, not Mistress Halda's winter nerves. She interviewed guards about moon shifts. She examined bedding for sweat patterns and claw tears. She checked diet, sleep cycles, and old remedies. She learned that Lord Meron had relied for years on heavy sedating draughts made with moonbane root and bitter sleep cap. The mixtures forced quiet but left wolves dull, feverish, and more reactive after the dose faded. Elowyn hated them immediately. "This is not calming," she told Kalen in the still room. "This is putting a lid on a boiling pot and calling the kitchen peaceful." Kalen stood across the table. "Meron says it has preserved secrecy. So would knocking everyone unconscious with a skillet." Valen, near the door, said softly, "Skillets are cheaper." Kalen gave him a look. Elowyn pointed at the old formula sheet. "Your physician treats your wolves like problems to suppress. That may work for one night. It worsens the season." Kalen listened. He did not like it. She could see that. Kings rarely enjoyed hearing their systems had been harming people under expensive labels. But he listened. That mattered. She replaced the heavy draughts with layered support. Cooling infusions in the afternoon, stronger mineral broth at supper, scent sachets chosen by individual response. Controlled moon exposure rather than sudden confinement. Quiet rooms without violet perfume. More food for young wolves whose bodies burned through strength. The last suggestion caused an immediate kitchen crisis. Werewolves, Elowyn discovered, could eat like honored guests at a famine. Tavi, the kitchen runner, appeared with a list and haunted eyes. "Mistress Brindle? Lord Tenrick ate 4 meat pies and asked whether the pies had cousins." Elowyn looked at Valen. Valen sighed. "Growing wolves. He is 24, late bloomer." The wolf, lying outside the still room door because the room rule remained firm, gave a deeply unconvincing cough. Elowyn called through the door, "I heard that." The cough became a sigh. Kalen began sleeping. Not enough at first. 2 hours. Then 4. Then nearly 6 on a rainy night when Elowyn hung cedar, apple peel, and calm grass near the North Tower windows. The castle treated 6 hours as a miracle. Halda cried quietly into a towel. Valen ordered extra breakfast. Tavi asked if Elowyn could make the king sleep through tax season. Elowyn said some illnesses were beyond herbs. Kalen heard this from the doorway. He asked if tax season was an illness. Elowyn told him it caused sweating, shouting, poor sleep, and blame. Valen declared the diagnosis sound. Kalen almost laughed. Almost became more common. Elowyn began to look for it. That was dangerous. She told herself she was studying patient improvement. A less exhausted king made better decisions. A less haunted man stopped holding his jaw like a locked gate. A calmer wolf did not steal her wool socks. Mostly. The wolf still stole things. He no longer entered her room. He respected the letter of the rule with insulting creativity. He waited outside her door and nudged his nose against the threshold. He sat in the hallway with one paw exactly not inside. He hooked abandoned items with one claw and dragged them out if she left them too close. One morning, Elowen opened her door to find him proudly presenting her left boot. The boot had been inside her room. She examined the floor. The boot had been close to the threshold. "You are a legal nuisance," she told him. The wolf wagged. Kaelin appeared at the end of the corridor, already dressed for counsel. "Has he crossed the line?" Elowen held up the boot. "He has developed border policy." Kaelin looked at the wolf. "Return it." The wolf picked up the boot and placed it 3 inches closer to Elowen. "All the way," Kaelin said. The wolf sighed. Elowen accepted the boot. "Your Majesty, your other self needs a treaty." Kaelin's gaze held hers. "He prefers yours." The sentence landed too warmly. Valen, appearing behind him with council papers, looked delighted and chose survival by silence. Elowen put on the boot before her blush could become policy. Romance, if that was what stalked the corridors, arrived badly. It arrived through stolen boots, corrected sleep schedules, and arguments about whether wolves needed scented pillows. It arrived when Kaelin carried a crate of dried herbs without being asked, then stood awkwardly because no one had told him where to put it. It arrived when Elowen caught him reading her notes by firelight and found that he had marked every question he owed her an answer. It arrived one afternoon in the old solar, where weak sun warmed the stone and Kaelin met her for the promised explanation of turning. Elowen had asked because she needed the facts. At least, that was what she told herself. Kaelin sat across from her at a small table. No guards. No wolf. No crown. Just a man with tired amber eyes and hands folded too tightly. "Turning is rare," he explained. "It cannot be done by accident. A bite alone is not enough in our court. It requires ritual, blood consent, moon witness, and a living bond. Without consent, it is forbidden." Elowen appreciated the plainness. "And dangerous?" Kaelin gave her the answer without softening it. "Yes." Elowen made herself ask the next question. "Painful?" Again, he did not hide from it. "Yes." She looked down at her notes. "Permanent?" "If it succeeds," Kaelin replied. Her hand stilled over the page. "If it fails?" His face shadowed. "Fever, madness, death in the worst cases." Elowen looked at the table. There it was. Not the tavern romance version. Not the moonlit legend. A body risk. A life risk. Kaelin's voice softened. "You do not need to consider it." She looked up. He held her gaze. "Not for my court. Not for safety. Not for me." The words should have pushed her away from him. Instead, they made trust take one careful step closer. Elowen asked, "Then why tell me?" "Because you asked, because I should have told you enough before you asked, because I will not build affection out of missing facts." No wolf stood nearby to huff or confirm. He did not need one. Elowen's throat tightened. Naturally, the door opened then. The wolf entered with a cushion in his mouth. Kaelin stared. "How did you open that?" The wolf dropped the cushion beside Elowen's chair and sat. Elowen looked from cushion to wolf. "Was my chair inadequate?" The wolf nudged the cushion toward her. Kaelin's face went blank with embarrassment. Elowen picked up the cushion. "Thank you." The wolf looked pleased. Kaelin said, "He is intruding. He brought lumbar support during a difficult conversation. He understands none of it." The wolf nudged the cushion closer. Elowen hugged the cushion and laughed until Kaelin finally laughed with her. It was quiet, brief, and startled by its own existence. It changed the room. The romance became impossible to pretend away after that. Kaelin began asking before entering any space where she worked. He knocked even when the door stood open. At first, it was formal. Then it became a joke between them. He would knock on the still room frame. Elowen would say, "Enter if you are not carrying stolen footwear." He would look at the wolf. The wolf would look elsewhere. Kaelin brought her reports on the old draughts. He let her question Meron's apprentices. He gave her access to stores that had been locked to human staff, though always with explanation and consent. He did not hover, though his wolf did. Meron noticed. So did everyone else. By the second week, the court split into 3 groups. One group believed Elowyn was saving the keep. One group believed she was dangerous because she was human. The third group, mostly servants, believed the Alpha King's wolf had better taste than the council. Elowyn preferred the third group. Lady Vesha, an old wolf noble with diamonds replaced by black glass beads, invited Elowyn to tea. The invitation smelled like a trap and rosewater. Elowyn attended because traps were easier to study from inside. The salon was warm, bright, and full of people pretending not to sniff her. Werewolf etiquette, she had learned, involved more nose discipline than human etiquette. Lady Vesha smiled over her cup. Mistress Brindle, do human villages often send healers into king's beds? Several nobles froze. Elowyn stirred her tea. Only when castles label corridors badly. Someone choked on a biscuit. Vesha's smile sharpened. You make light of a serious breach. I make light because no one died, my stocking was returned, and the king changed the signs. A younger lady turned toward the window with suspicious shoulders. Vesha set down her cup. You know too much now. There it was, no perfume around the blade. Elowyn's hand stilled. I know enough to make better tea, she replied. And enough to ruin us. Elowyn looked around the salon. Fear sat under every jewel and smooth sleeve. Not all cruel fear. Some of it was old, some inherited, some earned by a world that would kill what it did not understand. Her anger cooled into something steadier. If I meant to ruin you, Elowyn said, I would not begin by improving your sleep. Lady Vesha did not laugh, but a few others did. That mattered. When Elowyn left the salon, the wolf waited in the corridor. He was not blocking the door. Boundary training had improved. He sat 5 polite feet away with his tail wrapped around his paws. Elowyn stopped. Did Kaelin send you? The wolf rumbled. Did you send yourself? The wolf stood and leaned his head against her hip. Elowyn's heart did something unhelpful. You know, she murmured, scratching behind his ear, you are making it hard to remain professionally detached. Kaelin's voice came from the far arch. That was his plan. Elowyn turned. The king stood in shadow, looking more man than monarch. No crown, no council coat. Just black wool, tired eyes, and a softness he seemed unsure how to hold. She should have stepped away from the wolf. She did not. Kaelin walked closer, stopping with enough space between them. Vesha was cruel. Vesha was afraid. Both can be true. Elowyn smiled faintly. You are becoming very good at nuance. I have had a difficult tutor. The wolf's tail struck the floor once. Elowyn looked down. Was that a compliment or a complaint? Kaelin's mouth curved. Both can be true. The trouble came from Meron as it had always meant to. Elowyn discovered it by smell. The new batch of moon tea had a wrong note. It was almost hidden beneath chamomile and pine. Bitter, mineral, cold at the back of the throat even before tasting. She stopped with the ladle in hand. Tavi, who had become her unofficial kitchen scout, leaned over the pot. Is it bad? It is not mine. His eyes widened. The pot? The formula. She checked the herb jars. Frost leaf, calm grass, lemon balm, oat straw, all correct at first glance. Then she opened the sealed jar of moonbane root. It should not have been there at all. She had locked it away after reviewing Meron's formulas. The jar on her shelf carried her label, but the wax on the lid had been warmed and pressed again. The smell was fresh. Someone had added powdered moonbane to the evening tea. Enough to make wolves dull at first. Enough to make them worse later. Elowyn's stomach dropped. Fetch Valen, she told Tavi. Do not run like you are fetching Valen. Run like someone asked for onions. Tavi nodded with solemn confusion and bolted. Elowyn poured the tea into a basin and replaced the pot with plain broth before anyone could drink. Then she locked the altered jar in her chest and searched the still room. The missing evidence was not subtle once she knew to look. A smear of dark powder near the shelf. A thread from a green robe caught on a splinter. One page torn from her formula notes, then badly replaced. Meron was arrogant, not careful. That was fortunate, because Elowyn was furious. Valen arrived first, then Kaelin. The king entered with the wolf at his side. He saw Elowen's face and stopped. "No one drank it," she said at once. Kaelin's eyes shifted gold. The wolf's fur lifted. Valen shut the door. Elowen laid out the evidence: powder, thread, rewarmed wax seal, altered notes, the substituted jar. She explained Moonbane's delayed effect. She explained how Meron could claim her gentle treatment had failed if wolves lost control hours after drinking her tea. Kaelin listened without moving. When she finished, his voice was very quiet. "He meant to make you responsible. He meant to make you afraid of my methods." The wolf growled. Elowen pointed at him. "Do not growl near evidence. It feels dramatic, but contributes little." The wolf stopped. Valen looked impressed. Kaelin did not look away from her. "What do you need?" That question, so different from his first command days ago, nearly undid her anger. She took a breath. "A public test, tonight, before the court drinks anything." Valen's brows rose. "Public? Meron's weapon is fear," Elowen said. "Fear grows in locked rooms, so we open the room." Kaelin nodded once. "Done." The wolf picked up the altered jar in his mouth. Elowen lunged. "No, not with your teeth." The wolf froze. Kaelin looked alarmed. Elowen carefully took the jar away. "Evidence does not go in mouths." The wolf looked offended. "Especially royal mouths," she added. Valen coughed into his hand. That evening, the great hall filled under moonlight. No human guests had been invited. This was a wolf court matter, and Elowen had chosen to stand in it anyway. The hall smelled of beeswax, roasting meat, wet cloaks, and tension. Brass chandeliers shone above long tables. Wolves in human skin watched her with amber, brown, and green eyes. Some faces were wary, some curious, some openly hostile. Meron stood near the front in his green robe, hands folded, expression wounded before anyone accused him. Elowen hated that expression. Kaelin stood on the dais without a crown. The wolf sat at his left. That caused murmurs, because the wolf had not appeared publicly in the hall for years. He ignored everyone and stared at the covered evidence tray. Elowen suspected he still wanted to put the jar in his mouth. Kaelin lifted one hand, and the hall quieted. He did not speak for her. He turned to Elowen. That simple movement told the court she would be heard. Her pulse hammered. Her palms dampened. She was one human woman with herb stains on her sleeves, standing before creatures who could outrun horses and hear lies in breathing. She set her notes on the table so they would not see her hands shake. "I was invited here to treat winter restlessness," Elowen began. "That phrase was inaccurate. I have since been trusted with the truth." Murmurs moved through the hall. Meron's mouth tightened. Elowen continued. She explained the old draughts without insult first. She named the ingredients. She described the short calm and long rebound. Then she showed the altered jar and the warmed seal. Meron interrupted smoothly. "A human may misunderstand our needs." The wolf's ears flattened at Meron's sharp perfume. The hall went very still. Elowen looked at the wolf. The wolf looked proud of disliking the man correctly. Kaelin's jaw flexed. Elowen decided to continue before comedy took full command. "The wolf's opinion is noted, but not sufficient." Valen made a sound behind his hand. She presented the thread from Meron's robe, the missing formula page. Tavi's witness that no kitchen hand had touched the still room after noon. Halda's record that Meron had requested access to her stores that morning and been refused. Meron's face paled. He tried another angle. He claimed Elowen had enchanted the king's wolf. The wolf gave a disgusted snort. This time several people laughed. Meron flushed. "This is absurd." Elowen picked up the plain broth she had substituted. "Then drink this." Meron blinked. "What?" "It contains no moonbane, no sedative, no trap. If my work is dangerous, drink this and prove I have hidden something harmful in the replacement." He stared at the cup. The wolf leaned forward. Meron said he would not perform for a human. The wolf slammed one paw down so hard that one brass candle holder rattled. The hall broke into whispers. Kaelin stepped down from the dais. He did not move in front of Elowen. He stopped beside her. "Lord Meron," he said, voice quiet enough to make the hall strain. You endangered my court to restore your control over it. Maron's mask cracked. I preserved us while you let a human woman turn your wolf into a kitchen pet. The wolf stood. Elowin put one hand on his head without thinking. The wolf sat again. The hall watched. Kaelin watched too. Something changed in his face. Not surprise, recognition. Maron saw it and made the final mistake. You see? She commands him. Elowin lifted her hand. No. He chose to listen. Kaelin looked at her. The whole hall seemed to fall away for one breath. Then Kaelin faced the court. Mistress Brindle knows our secret because I told her, he said. Late and not well enough. She remains because she chose to remain. She treats this court because she is skilled. She stands beside me tonight because I trust her judgment. Murmurs rose again, different now. Elowin felt heat climb her throat. Kaelin continued. No human will be bound here by fear. No healer will be silenced because truth inconveniences rank. And no one will call my wolf honest only when his honesty serves them. The wolf huffed softly. Elowin whispered, that was supportive. Kaelin's mouth curved. Valen ordered Maron detained. The physician protested until the wolf picked up his green robe hem and dragged him 3 inches toward the guards. No teeth, no injury, just humiliation with fur. Elowin covered her face. The hall laughed. Not cruelly, not all of them, but enough to break the fear open. Maron was removed, still shouting about dignity. The wolf gave one last indignant rumble. After that night, everything became easier and more complicated. Elowin was no longer merely the human herbalist. She was the human herbalist who had corrected the court physician, touched the Alpha King's wolf in public, and survived Lady Vesha's tea. The servants adored her. Half the nobles respected her. The other half respected her only when the wolf was visible. Elowin considered that a start. Kaelin changed too. He did not become suddenly cheerful. That would have alarmed everyone. But he slept more. He listened faster. He asked before issuing orders when the order involved her work. The wolf became unbearable. Public approval had ruined him. He carried her herb basket through halls and looked proud. He sat beside her during council until Valen had to write around his tail. He escorted her to dinner, then abandoned Kaelin at the high table and lay under Elowin's bench. Kaelin blamed instincts. Elowin blamed affection. The wolf thumped his tail whenever Kaelin objected. One evening, after the moon season eased, Kaelin found Elowin in the herb yard, cutting rosemary under a sunset the color of warm apples. The air smelled of thawing soil and clean smoke. Birds called in the pines. Somewhere in the stable yard, Tavi argued with a cook about whether pies had cousins. The wolf was with Elowin, of course. He lay on his back in the path, paws in the air, making it impossible for her to reach the mint bed. Elowin told him he was a disgrace to ancient moonblood. The wolf wagged. Kaelin stopped at the gate. He looks unwell. Elowin clipped one rosemary stem. He is suffering from attention starvation. Kaelin considered the wolf's tragic pose. Fatal? She stepped over one huge paw, only to nearby productivity. Kaelin walked closer. He looked different in evening light, less carved, more alive. His black coat was open at the throat, and his hair had escaped its tie near one temple. Elowin straightened. Do you need something? Yes. That single word carried too much. The wolf rolled to his feet and wandered toward the far rosemary hedge with suspicious innocence. Elowin watched him go. That was subtle. Kaelin looked after him. For him, yes. Then he faced her. For once, he did not hide behind court matters. I want to court you openly, Kaelin said. Elowin's heart gave one foolish leap. She folded her arms to keep it from escaping. Is this a royal request or a wolf recommendation? Mine. The wolf gave a muffled huff from the hedge. Kaelin's eyes closed. Elowin smiled. Try again. He opened his eyes, and the humor in them made her chest warm. Mostly mine, he said. The wolf stayed quiet. Progress. Elowin looked down at the rosemary in her hand. She had known this was coming in small ways. In how he gave her space. In how he stood beside her, not over her. In how he answered questions that frightened them both. in how his wolf, shameless and stubborn, had trusted her before Kaelin knew how. She also knew the risk. She was human. He was not. His court would not all approve. The world outside the keep might be worse. Love did not make teeth less sharp or secrets less heavy. But she had never trusted easy things. I am not choosing to turn, she said. Kaelin's answer came without pause. I know. Eowyn kept her voice steady. I may never choose it. Kaelin did not hesitate. I know. She studied his face for any sign of disappointment. If I stay human, your court will argue. His mouth curved without humor. My court argues about soup. Eowyn shook her head. This is not soup? No, he agreed, and the warmth left his teasing. This matters. That steadied her. She stepped closer. And if your wolf decides to move into my room? He will not. The wolf pawed the grass. Eowyn looked over his shoulder. Kaelin sighed. He will ask. The wolf huffed from the hedge. Politely, Kaelin added. Eowyn laughed. The laugh loosened the last tight knot inside her. Then yes, she said. You may court me openly. Kaelin's face changed. Not dramatically. He was still Kaelin. But the guarded place behind his eyes opened, and the warmth there moved through her like sunlight through glass. He reached for her hand, then stopped half an inch away, asking without words. Eowyn put her hand in his. His palm was warm, calloused, and careful. The wolf bounded out of the hedge carrying a stolen rosemary bundle. Eowyn groaned. He planned this. Kaelin looked at the wolf, then at the rosemary, then at their joined hands. Kaelin looked pained. He believes rosemary is traditional. Eowyn lifted the stolen bundle. For courtship? The king glanced at the wolf. For roast lamb. The wolf made a protesting sound. They both laughed. Kaelin courted with the grave dedication of a man learning a foreign language from a mischievous animal. He began by sending flowers. They were beautiful, deep red and winter white, arranged with formal elegance. Eowyn admired them for 1 minute before finding the wolf asleep with his nose in the basket. The card read, With respect, Kaelin Varric. Eowyn told him it sounded like a trade agreement. The next card read, With less trade, Kaelin. She kept that one. He brought her rare seeds from the southern glass house. He walked with her through the herb yard at dusk. He asked about her old shop, her parents, the aunt who taught her poultices, and the baron who once demanded a cure for baldness and received a hat recommendation. He told her about his father, who had ruled with fear and called it order. He told her about the first time his wolf broke a chain meant to restrain him. He told her how difficult it was to believe gentleness could hold power without weakening it. Eowyn listened. Sometimes she joked because tears sat too close. Sometimes he laughed. The wolf helped badly. During one walk, he shoved Kaelin lightly from behind just as the king reached for Eowyn's hand. Kaelin stumbled with perfect royal horror and nearly knocked over a mint pot. Eowyn caught the pot. Kaelin caught her elbow. Their faces ended too close. The wolf sat and looked pleased with governance. Eowyn whispered, Your instincts are arranging accidents. Kaelin's voice was lower than usual. They have become politically active. She should have moved away. She did not. Their first kiss happened in the still room because romance in Varric Keep had no sense of setting. Rain tapped the windows. A pot of calming syrup cooled on the table. Eowyn had flour on one sleeve from helping Tavi hide experimental herb biscuits from judgment. Kaelin had come to report that Lady Vesha had admitted Eowyn's revised moon season schedule was effective, though she called it human meddling with acceptable outcomes. Eowyn laughed so hard she dropped a spoon. Kaelin picked it up. Their hands brushed. That was all. No moon burst through clouds. No wolf howled. No chorus sang. Only a spoon, rain, rosemary steam, and Kaelin looking at her as if asking mattered more than wanting. Eowyn rose on her toes and kissed him first. It was soft, careful, warm. It lasted 3 heartbeats before the door creaked open. The wolf pushed his head in, saw them, and gave a triumphant snort. Eowyn broke against Kaelin's mouth and laughed. Kaelin rested his forehead against hers. I am going to ban him from romance. Kalen's answer was grim. He will appeal. Elowyn tilted her head. To whom? The wolf wagged before Kalen could reply, so she answered for him. Me. The wolf wagged. 3 weeks after Elowyn had first entered the wrong room, Kalen called a formal court gathering. No one knew the purpose. That made everyone nervous. Nobles wore their best dark clothes. Servants lined the walls. Brass candles burned in every sconce. The air smelled of wax, pine, and restrained speculation. Elowyn stood near Halda, not on the dais. She had chosen a simple green gown that did not pretend to be noble. Her herb-stained hands were clean, but faint traces of rosemary remained under one nail. She liked that. She had not become someone else to stand there. Kalen entered without a crown again. The wolf walked beside him. That alone silenced the hall. Kalen spoke first of the moon season. He announced Maron's removal, the new healer council, protections for human staff who entered the keep under contract, and rules for disclosure when their safety was involved. His voice was steady, not defensive, not ashamed. Then he turned toward Elowyn. Her stomach flipped. The wolf trotted to her side and sat, subtle as thunder. A ripple of laughter moved through the servants. Kalen's mouth curved before he looked at the court again. Mistress Elowyn Brindle came to this keep as a healer, he said. Through our secrecy, she was placed in danger. Through her skill, she saved lives. Through her honesty, she changed this court for the better. Elowyn forgot how to breathe. He stepped down from the dais and stopped in front of her, not too close. I have asked to court her, Kalen continued. She has allowed it. If she chooses to stand beside me, she will do so as herself. Human, healer, free. Lady Vesha looked as if she had swallowed a lemon and decided it had political value. Valen looked satisfied. Halda dabbed one eye with a cloth. The wolf leaned against Elowyn's skirt. Kalen's gaze met hers. The hall was listening, but the question belonged to her. Elowyn, he said, will you stand beside me tonight? Not forever. Not as command. Not as ritual. Tonight. A choice she could answer. Elowyn looked at the man who had learned to ask. She looked at the wolf who had stolen her stocking, guarded her door, ruined lies, and brought cushions to terrifying conversations. She looked at the court that still frightened her, and the servants who smiled from the walls. Then she stepped forward. Yes, she answered. But if your wolf steals my shoes again, I want that recorded as royal misconduct. The hall burst into laughter. Kalen laughed too, low and real. The wolf huffed, then placed one paw over Elowyn's foot. Valen announced, with perfect seriousness, that the record would reflect conditional shoe protection. That was the moment Varric Keep changed. Not completely, not magically, but enough. By early spring, Elowyn had a permanent still room, a contract written in plain language, and a clause stating that no wolf, royal or otherwise, could remove personal garments without permission. The clause was violated twice, both times by the same wolf. Kalen claimed enforcement was difficult when the offender shared his soul. Elowyn told him that sounded like a confession. The wolf gave a guilty cough. They spent evenings in the herb yard when weather allowed. Sometimes Kalen came as king, heavy with counsel. Sometimes he came as wolf, silent and warm, resting his head on Elowyn's knee while she read. She loved both versions carefully, with her eyes open. She did not choose turning that spring. Kalen never asked. That was part of why she stayed. On the first warm night after the thaw, Elowyn returned to her room and found the wolf sitting outside her door. He held a small sachet in his mouth. Rosemary, cedar, apple peel, and calm grass. Her own blend. Kalen stood a few steps behind him, looking guilty before she asked. Elowyn crossed her arms. Did he steal that? Kalen answered. He borrowed it. The wolf's ears tilted back. Elowyn looked at him. Kalen corrected himself. He stole it. The wolf wagged. She took the sachet from his mouth. And why is the thief at my door? Kalen stepped closer. His voice softened. Because I wanted to ask whether I might sit with you a while. Elowen looked at the wolf. And he came to supervise? He came to ensure I asked before entering. The wolf sat very straight. Elowen's heart warmed until it hurt. She opened the door and stepped aside. Then both of you may come in. The wolf moved first, of course. He trotted to the hearth rug and lay down as if he had owned it since the first night. Kaelin paused at the threshold, still asking, still giving her the choice. Elowen reached for his hand and drew him inside. Later, with the fire low and the wolf snoring shamelessly near the hearth, Kaelin sat beside her by the window. Moonlight touched the floor. The room smelled of rosemary, cedar, smoke, and home. He told her he still blamed the wrong corridor. Elowen leaned against his shoulder. I blame the missing tapestry. Halda blames the storm. The wolf opened one eye. Elowen smiled. And he blames instincts. Kaelin looked at the wolf, then at her. His mouth curved with the warmth she had once wanted to unlock. No, he said. This one is mine. The wolf did not protest. Elowen took that as proof enough. She kissed Kaelin under the moon that had started the whole mess, and in the hearthlight beside them, the Alpha King's wolf finally stopped pretending he had not planned everything from the start. Thank you for listening. If this story made you laugh, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our next story. We'll see you in the next one.